Hey guys, the Bloodhunt Play Test is finally over, and I wanted to share my experience with the game during the weekend, as well as give my feedback on the game and the new additions. I'll be going into detail on some of the bugs and changes that I encountered, but overall I had great fun running around Prague once again, and I can't wait for the release this spring. Let me know how your weekend went, and if you have any gameplay feedback in the comments below. I covered all the new additions in detail in a recent video, so go check that out if you just want to see what was added. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more Bloodhunt breakdowns, and the little bell to be the first to get new content. I'll add chapters for each section, so if there's a part you are more interested in, you can skip to it easily. Starting off with my experience on the server side of things. Hit registering on weapons was super scuffed at times, to the point where I could empty a full magazine into an enemy and get 0 damage, but when they shot back, they are able to deal instant damage to me. This wasn't a latency issue, as I had experienced this even on EU servers. The issue wasn't limited to a certain weapon either, as I had very clear instances on multiple weapons, including anything from the silenced SMG to the toggler. This had played a large part of my playtest weekend, and was extremely frustrating when you die without being able to deal any damage. But one tip I discovered near the end of testing was that reloading your weapon reset the bug, and would allow you to deal damage once more. This cut down on the effect, but this is an obvious must-be fixed issue before launch in my opinion. Most people I've spoken to also experienced some kind of no registration issue to some extent, and I didn't experience this issue at all in early access. As for matchmaking, the first 2 days were terrible for me. Queue times were super short at under 20 seconds, but I was being sent to high latency servers without hesitation, and I only managed to find a couple of EU servers over 20 hours or so of gameplay. The matchmaking priority was changed at 1 AM on Sunday, which was a night and day difference, giving me almost always an EU game and the occasional high latency match if queue times were longer. I would rather wait a little longer still to guarantee a good connection, but I think this will be an easy fix for when the game releases, with a slight tweak to the matchmaking priority, and many more people will be online at the same time, meaning less queue time to begin with. A lot of the glitches and bugs during the weekend happened during these high latency matches, so I've disregarded those bugs and have focused on the issues that happen in good connection conditions for this video. If these issues were fixed for launch, then I would be happy with the state of the servers in general. I never experienced any complete disconnects from any server, even on high ping, and I didn't see anyone teleporting. Overall, when I was on EU servers, they felt very stable with very few rubber banding, hitching, or latency spikes. These could have come from my end though, as I didn't do any testing on the matter, and I know that I've been having network issues recently. Moving on to my thoughts on the new solo Bloodhunt mode. I enjoyed the constant battles, and I love how the game feels chaotic from start to finish with the increased number of alive players. Final zones are now great places to test your skill instead of a previous hunt for the last person in early access. My only issue is how quickly eliminated players can get back into the same fight they just died in. The respawns in the Bloodhunt mode need to be reworked. People are respawning far too close to the death locations, even at times in front of the person who killed them. This is funneling far too many people into the same fight and causing complete chaos, where the last player to arrive is often coming out on top more than the most skilled player in the bunch. I feel like killing a player and then being third-partied by the same person as I'm fighting a second nearby player seems like a cheap way to die. I would increase the distance at which you can respawn significantly to avoid everyone running into the same spot over and over. This should allow people to recuperate a little after a fight and reduce the amount of third parties. I also experienced some spawns inside the gas, although in my case the safe zone was nearby and the invulnerability kept me safe until I could reach it. But I've heard of people spawning well into the gas in the later stages of the match, so maybe something to look into. The amount of extra life mortals felt like a nice balance. They were present enough so that you could find one if you search for a bit, without being an impossible task or too easy for everyone to find. I didn't find that the other resonances were lacking either, partly because of the new perks where you can start the match with 2 buffs, and partly because there was rarely the time to go loot mortals with a constant action anyway. I felt like consumables in general are a lot harder to find in this mode, mostly because there are so many more people alive at any given time, using and looting the remaining supply. But also because incoming players are spawning nearby and aren't carrying consumables to the fight so we can top up. I think maybe adding an extra syringe or blood bag when finishing an enemy could help people who find themselves in a lot of fights with no time to go loot stay in the action for longer. Ammo was rarely an issue for me, even with changing the Archetype perk away from the base one. The lack of consumables is definitely a change of gameplay, and really makes Muse and Sanguine buffs even more important than they already are. But it's something I can see myself adapting to with a bit more playtime. The respawn cutoff felt nice. It was late enough to give players with an extra life a chance to get in the final fights, without feeling like the final zone was overwhelming in the number of respawn players. I experienced second to final zones in the 5 to 10 player range, which was a nice number to balance action with the space available. Having a space where I don't need to go full tryhard sweat mode is a must, as sometimes I want to be able to relax on the game and just get some kills. If I want to push my limits and go against the best players, there's always rank to fill that need. With some minor tweaks, I think this will be the mode I play the most, as it allows for both high kill games for experienced players, and a good way to get used to the mechanics and practice fights for newer or lower skill players before hitting up the full-blown battle royale. My thoughts on the archetype changes since early access. Having played Brute enough to be fairly comfortable with his abilities, I didn't notice any changes. Probably the most balanced archetype still in my opinion. The only issue I had was to do with the leap not working as intended, and instead making a baby jump, but this was likely a latency issue as it didn't happen on EU servers. Vandal's slam has been ruined somehow. From my experience as a Vandal main, I can say that trying to aim and use the slam was a nightmare during the tests. Not only can we no longer slam straight downwards, but half of the time I attempt to slam, it doesn't pick up on a surface to slam to, and sometimes when it does, it will send you flying in the wrong direction, away from where you were originally aiming. I'm not sure what the intended change was, but something is majorly broken. At times I'm just unable to slam on anything around me, which catches you off guard when you could be shooting or repositioning instead of mashing or holding the ability button to hope to find a surface. In the early access period, it was mostly fine except for a few areas where the terrain was uneven. I had noticed that some of my slams that missed would stun the player anyway, which felt unfair. I have been in contact with a member of Sharkmob to try and fix the issue, as I have loads of clips of it not behaving correctly. They have confirmed that it is not working as intended and are looking into a fix. I like Saboteur's bombs rework. I find the lack of visibility to be a nice addition to the gas, but I'd like to see Saboteur maybe take reduced damage from the gas, or have increased visibility in his own gas perhaps. I'm not sure how this would work for balancing, but fighting as a Saboteur inside multiple gas bombs can get difficult to tell where I'm taking damage from and where the limits of the enemy gas bombs are. I'd like to see the trigger radius increase very slightly, as sometimes nearby bombs aren't set off when the enemy appears to have gone through the radius, but generally I'm happy with the abilities now, even if I rarely use his passive. I discovered a bug where Saboteur will make the cloaking noise over and over when crouched though, and I actually found a Saboteur or two because of the noise it was making. Certainly not very hidden with that, but it was a fairly rare thing. Crowder's scouting famulus still has some clipping issues with rooftops, where you aim it near the top of a wall or rooftop from ground level, and the bats phase through the walls to stop at the maximum range of the ability in the air. Other than this small issue, I think Prowler is in a nice spot currently, but I didn't see many enemy Prowlers, so maybe the scouting famulus nerf was too much. I like the addition of the Toreador projection dash heads up display, where it is coloured while the projection is still available. This is a nice quality of life feature which makes it easier to figure out in what state our ability is in. I also feel like I'm keeping more momentum when teleporting, although I don't play Toreador as much, so this may have been a placebo effect with me expecting a change. Playing Siren revealed a buff in the radius at which mortals will get charmed by his passive, which is a great addition. I don't feel like I have to run up to individual mortals so not to break the Masquerade anymore. I was also on occasion able to tell that a Siren was nearby, with mortals being charmed, which was an unexpected fun side effect. Muse still feels balanced to me, and I don't feel like anything changed since the early access, but I had some issues trying to teleport while downed. This could have been a latency related issue however, so I didn't think much of it. Moving on to the Enforcer abilities. Overall, I like the new archetype. He allows for a new playstyle and adds a new aspect to try and counter, even though I felt like he lacked in movement potential. Flesh of Marble seems way too strong in my opinion. It will counter any attack from any direction, which is fine, but the fact that you can break out of the effect at any time very quickly to shoot back seems overpowered to me. I think an animation should be added, for either when they break out of the ability to stop the instant god mode to damage output, or make it a fixed duration that people can adapt to. The Enforcer Dash seemed balanced enough as a distance closing ability, although it seems to not dash very far, and with no other movement ability, I don't like how immobile he feels, although that's more my opinion rather than balance. I had mixed experiences with the ability however, as sometimes the silence worked as intended, but there were many times where I was convinced to have hit the enemy with a dash, but they were able to use their abilities anyway. I'm not sure if this is a hit register issue, or perhaps an audio cue that is confusing me as to if I hit the player or not. I'm certain however that the enemy had a white highlight effect on them after hitting, so in my mind they were stuck, only to watch them leap away or use a blind ability. I think the highlighted effect on the enemy should be tweaked to better show when they are no longer silenced. I had no issues on the receiving end of this, as the whole heads-up display lights up and makes it very easy to tell when you are silenced and when you can use your abilities again. As for the Enforcer passive slow, I think the effect should wear off sooner once the Enforcer is dead or out of range, in a similar way to the Saboteur's Sewer Bomb. I don't like how the slow effect is still applying after I've eliminated an opponent and are now battling third parties. As for the slow itself, I find it infuriating at times, but it's something I could learn to play against, and I don't think I'll have as much of an issue if Flesh of Marble is more balanced. The Archetype levels and perks are a great way to keep people grinding the game, and I had fun trying to level up each one. The level progression feels nice, although maybe I'll tweak the first couple a little. I don't feel like I deserve to get level 3 after one match where I didn't win or get a load of kills. Levels feel like a good progression rate around 8 to 11, but I haven't got further than level 12 at the moment, so it's hard to tell if level 20 is in a good spot or too grindy. I would like to see the levels continue after the last perk unlock though, maybe go to 50 max for long-term grinding. I would also like to see some mastery skin unlocks related to these levels. Perhaps a clan-specific skin for getting both archetypes to level 20 or 30. I would like to see an ultimate grind skin as well. Something like completing all challenges for the base archetypes to unlock a unique skin or accessory that could be used on all archetypes. This would be something that requires real challenges per archetype, and not just a playtime counter, to have a meaningful place among other skins. I enjoyed the perks which we can choose from. It meant that I had more liberty on how I wanted to play a certain archetype, even if the buffs that I wanted were sometimes higher up in the levels. I find that the Juggernaut ability is kind of a waste though. I can see no advantage to dealing damage with a high fall, except for activating Bloodhunts by accident. I have very rarely had a high fall onto an immobile enemy, and the few times I have, they were mid-diablerie. I can deal more than the 25 damage with any weapon on the way down to them, and I don't risk killing mortals accidentally. Unless this perk comes with some kind of stun similar to Vandal's Slam to go with it, I see no reason to use this over any other perk available, and would swap it out for something similar to Red Gas immunity or starting with armor. Being able to start the match with 2 resonance buffs cut down on the mid-match looting process though, and kept me in the action for longer, so I liked that. Although I've found a new hatred for anyone who went for the choleric buffs in the early game. General gameplay and weapons changes. The new user interface layout in the Elysium has improved greatly, which is a nice addition. But one thing I found weird was the position of the queues in the matchmaking selection screen, but this is probably to leave room for ranked and other playlists to come. I just feel like it would look better centered, but it's a minor detail, and everything felt updated and smoother. I liked how random challenges that I was close to completing would show in the Elysium. They felt more meaningful than some of the challenges in the early access, even though there was no real challenge list for the playtest. I love how the Elysium is constantly changing. I don't spend a lot of time there, but I do like running around at least once to see all the new additions and areas in there. I still think there is room somewhere for a firing range, which would avoid an extra level or mode just for a practice room. The new audio changes and additions were great. I had an easier time of figuring out which weapon the enemy is using even from a distance, and whoever made the windows squeak when we slide on them needs a raise. I still have an easy time of figuring out from which direction someone is pushing me, so no issues on footsteps or climbing. I wasn't sure why some cars would have alarms and others wouldn't, however. At first I thought they were removed completely until 1 or 2 went off. Weapon swapping still seems unresponsive, and sometimes it won't swap even though I press the button. I feel like the input gets lost with the other animations or interactions, and I feel like the command should be queued there somewhere. Swapping from the sniper rifle in particular feels very slow, as even after I have a new weapon in hand, there is another delay before I can shoot. I understand that this may be a balancing act, but I feel it would be better represented with a slower sniper swap animation. This isn't game breaking, but it would certainly make the combat feel even more fluid and polished. In a similar fashion, when exiting an animation and holding right click to aim, I don't aim as soon as I'm able to, and instead the input is completely ignored, and I'm left expecting an aim down sight, and I'm surprised by hipfire instead. The same applies to the katana and probably the scorch blades too. These were also issues in the early access, so I'm not sure that anything has been changed, or not noticeably so at least. I absolutely love the new sounds to indicate that the weapon magazine is empty. It makes gauging the ammo count on weapons mid-fight a lot easier. Shotguns seem to be way more consistent compared to the early access period, which is great. I'm not sure what changed exactly, but I feel like the shots that I miss only by a margin are still spreading out and doing a small amount of damage, whereas in the early access it would shoot miles off towards a building in the distance. I found a new love for the purple pump action shotgun, but I'll be keeping an eye on it as it is very powerful in close quarter situations. I'm not a fan of a new 9-barreled rifle. With only 9 shots before needing to reload, it often feels like a gamble that the sped up RPM will do the damage that the first few bullets fail to do. I will almost always pick up a marksman rifle or a toggler over this weapon, but it's a fun concept and can lead to some very quick downs. I think overall it feels balanced though, just a higher risk using it compared to other options, so I won't be using it as much. I will be doing a top 5 weapons in Bloodhunt video soon, so make sure you're subscribed for that one. The revolver nerf was nice to see. It allows players with higher accuracy to deal large amounts of damage, but not to the point of 2-shot kills from full health, giving players a small window to react and escape. I was still terrible with it though, so I'll be sticking to more forgiving weapons unless I find the purple or gold variation. The gold toggler felt amazing with its increased fire rate, and I wish that I'd found it more often over the weekend, as it has replaced the golden assault rifle on my list of favourite weapons. I didn't like the new increased bloom on some weapons, like the assault rifle, although it does make sense on where the weapon should be in terms of balance, and gives weapons like the marksman and toggler a more meaningful place in the loot pool. I would rarely pick up the latter in the early access, but I found them very useful in the test as a more precise, medium-range engagement tool. I felt like some of my shots should be hitting, but weren't because of the bloom, but this will only push me away from certain weapons. The lack of higher tier weapons made finding purple or gold variants feel a lot more rewarding, although I miss running double golden weapons in almost every match. I also came across the minigun a couple of times, so it's not so rare that no one can find it. I had a few issues with melee attacks. Sometimes I felt like I should have hit a player when no damage was given. I'm not sure if this was a hit registration issue or hitbox issue, but it mostly happened when the other player was either downed or on a different elevation to me. The improvements to the hitboxes in 0.6 helped massively with this, so it could just be me. Loot dispersal seemed way tighter than in early access on eliminated players, and I struggled at times to pick up a weapon on the floor because it was being overlapped by too many other things. In a similar fashion, opening chests and diablerizing enemies seemed like I need to be far closer and actually looking directly at the chest or player to be able to use and hold the action button, which felt like a step back from previous experiences. This sounds like an easy fix though, as I didn't have an issue in 0.6. I'd like to see some more HUD elements as a spectator in both solos and trios. Being able to see how many resonance buffs the player has would be nice. Sometimes I get downed in a fight and I don't know if the enemy had choleric buffs, for example, and it would be a good excuse for my lack of skill. Being eliminated in trios still also kicks you to the match summary screen, so you can't spectate the team who took you out or report them if need be. This wasn't a major issue during the playtests, but with the launch this might be a needed feature. I would like to see a similar system to Warzone, where the party leader has control on entering or exiting matches, with individual players able to exit the match, but will also leave the group. The match summary overview skips to the next tab on left mouse click, but we cannot go back if we skip the first page too soon. It would be nice to be able to select the tab we want by scrolling left or right. I would also like to be able to see the group stats at the end of a duels or trios match. Just some basic things like kills, assists, diabs and damage would be plenty. This would also make it easier for people going for kill records to show the whole picture and not just one point of view. I like the small upgrades to the summary menu, but I want to have a word with the person who decided that 5500 damage was not enough to get a tier 4 damage card. The final topic is in-game performance, and it was different. FPS in general was way more stable than the early access in DirectX 12, but it felt like it had taken a slight hit to maximum average FPS. I'd heard good things from people on lower end systems though, so the improvements have obviously helped, and a load of the crashes seem to have been fixed. I had a few issues in the beginning with crashes and dropped frames on both the game and stream, but with some playing around in the settings I was able to get it to a stable point with only a couple of hitches where the game would freeze with no input for 20 seconds or so, and only 1 or 2 crashes where I had to restart the game. With a Ryzen 5600X, 3070 Ti and 32GB of RAM, running native resolution at 1440p with no SFR meant that I had to put the graphics settings to medium with draw distance on ultra and limit the FPS in game to 90 so that OBS would run smoothly. Even when I was not streaming and just simply recording the gameplay, it would massively drop frames if I had limited it to even 120. I believe this to be a shader compilation issue for DirectX 12, as I had the yellow icon in the top right during 99% of my playtime, with regular spikes to the red icon when I would spawn or enter a new area. My GPU would be running at 50 to 60% utilization in the Elysium, and generally 70 to 80% in game, so it shouldn't be dropping frames at all, but something was pushing the utilization percentage higher in spikes. This, accompanied by high latency, made for some unpleasant experiences at times, but overall stability was up massively compared to the early access, and I was able to spend more time in matches and less in the menus or Elysium. There were very few bugs that actually hindered my experience during the playtest, and most of them will be easily fixed. I had a great time running around Prague, and the general movement and gameplay is still just as amazing as in the early access. I can't wait to see what Sharkmob have planned for the full launch and over the course of Season 1. And that just about covers everything I wanted to talk about from this weekend. I wanted to be thorough and cover as much as possible, and I hope I didn't sound too critical of the game, as I only want the best for Bloodhunt, but the issues need pointing out so they can improve on them for launch. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my thoughts and how your playtest experience was. I want to thank everyone who survived the whole video, as this was a long one, and it means a lot to me that you were interested in my opinion. Make sure to hit the like button and check out some of my other Bloodhunt videos, or join my Discord server where we can chat about the changes.